Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Praptasya Kalyana Gunana Vasya Bande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Praptasya Kalyana Gunana Vasya Bande Guru Shri Charanara Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Mahaprabhu ki tananita gita Vaditra madhya Manasurasena Mahaprabhu ki tananita gita Vaditra madhya Romanchakam pasru taranga vajo Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Romanchakam Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityanana Shringaratanama Niramajanado Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityanana Shringaratanama Juktasya Bhaktamsya Niyonjatopi Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Tapi Vande Guru Shri Charanara Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavad Prasada Satana Triptan Hari Bhakta Shanga Chaturvidha Kritaiva trupte vajata shadeva Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Shiradikama Gabayara Para Madhura Lila Gunarupa Namna Shiradikama Gabayara Para Madhura Lila Gunarupa Namna Pratikshana Swa Danalalupasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Ne kunjayono Ratikeli Siddhai Jayali Bheri Jokti Apekshaneya Tatra Tidaksha Ativala Vasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Tatra Tidacha Patimalahasya Sakshat Haritena Shamasta Shashre Ruktastat Bhava Gataiva Sadhavi Sakya Haritena Shamasta Shashre Kintu Prabodja Priya Eva Tasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasado Yasya Prasada Nagati Kutapi Yasya Prasada Sada Yasya Prasada Dhyayam Stubham Tasya Yasatrin Sanyam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Dhyayam Stubham Tasya Yasatrin Sanyam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitina Mine Nama Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitina Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Shunavadi Pachata Deshatarine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hariyaraye Namah, Krishna Jadavaye Namah, Jadavaye Madhavaya Kesavaye Namah, Gopal Govindaram Shri Madhusudan, Giridhari Gopina Madana Mohan, Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita, Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita, Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghuna, Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasaraguna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Radha Nila Madhav, Radha Nila Madhav Radhi, Shri Radha Jaya Jagannath, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadrama, Jaya Sudarshan Chakra. Jaya Sitaram, Sitaram, Jaya Lakshman Hanuman. Sitaram, Nitai Gaura Haribo, Haribo, Nitai Gaura Haribo, Haribo. Haribo Nitai Gaura Pramanande Haribo. Jai Vishnupada Paramanta Prabhagavacharya Sutara Srishima Iskan Pratishta Viviti Samstapakacharya Vaishnav Saramani Gaura Priyajana Krishna Prema Bhakti Datta Patita Pavana. His Divine Grace Abhacharavina Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Shri Gauriya Guru Varga Patita Udhar Ki Jai, Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunatha, Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Das Aguna Sat Goswami Prabhu's Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ji Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय। जय परम दयाल से नित्यानंद प्रभु की जय। जय प्रेम नाम संकीर्तन एक जनक प्रेम पुरुषोत्तम श्री सच्चिदानंद स्मरण गौरंग श्री चैतन्य महाप्रभु गौर हरि महावरणावतार की जय। गोलोकेर प्रमधान हरि नाम संकीर्तन जय की जय। जुग धर्म हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय। बृहद नितांग ट्रांसलेंटल बुक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सेवा की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपना राधा कुंद श्याम कुंद गिरिराज गोवर्धन की जय। श्री ब्रज वृंदावन मथुरा धाम की जय। टेलोशिप श्री श्री रंजन माधव की जय। श्री श्री मायापुर नवद्वीप एक चक्र धाम की जय। परम करुण श्री श्री गौर निताय की जय। श्री पुरुषोत्तम चित्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय। श्री श्री जगन्नाथ स्वामी रथ यात्रा महोत्सव की जय। आदि रथ यात्रा की जय। श्री भक्ति सर्व विघ्न विनाशन कर सिंहरे भगवान की जय। जय गंगा माई जमुना माई की जय। तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी भक्ति देवी की जय। श्री मथुरा रानी की जय। समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय। निताय गौरी प्रमानंदे। All glories to the assembled bodies. All glories to the assembled bodies. All glories to the assembled bodies. All glories, all glories, all glories to Shri Shri Guru, Shri Gauranga.
Can I have the chart? Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Praladadaine. Hiranyakashipu Shilatankanakalaye.
Silatang
Ito Nasimha Parato Nasimha.
Ito Nisingha Parata Nisingha.
Yato Yato Yamitato Simha.
Jaya Jata Jata Jaya. Baye Nisingha Hridaye Nisingha.
Narasimha Madim Sharanam Prapati.
Narasingha Madim Sharanam Prapade.
Tabakara Kamala Vare Naka Adbhuta Shringa Amdarita Hiranyakashipu Tanubringa Keshavadita Nararidura. Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re.
Abakara Kamala Bare Adbhuta Sriyanga Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanabringa Kesavadita Narari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Jai Jagadisha Jai Jagadisha
Jaya Keshavadritan Hari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare
Jaya Kesavadruta Narari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Jai Jagadisha Jai Jagadisha
Narasimha Dev Jai Narasimha Dev Jaya Narasimha Dev Jai Narasimha Dev
Jaya Nisingare Nisingare Jaya Nisingare Jaya Nisingare
Jaya Bhakta Prahlad Jaya Bhakta Prahlad Jaya Bhakta Prahlad Jaya Bhakta Prahlad
Jaya Bhakta Prahlad Bhakta Prahlad Bhakta Prahlad Srila Prahlad Maharaj
Nitya Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol
Hari Bol
Hari Bol Nitya Gaura Hari Bol
Nittai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nittai Gaura Hari Bol Jai Shri Shri Bhakti Pata Sarvigna Vinashana Krishna Hare Bhagavan Ki Jai Jai Bhakta Shrestha Prahlad Maharaj Ki Jai Nittai Gaura Hari Pramanande Hari 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 Bol Shri Vrindaye Tulasi Debai Priyaye Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Shatavataye Namo Namaha Vrindaye Tulasi Debai Priyaye Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Shatavataye Namo Namaha Vrindaye Tulasi Devaye Priyaye Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Shatavataye Namo Namaha Jai Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha.
Radha Krishna seva pavo ei abhilasi.
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 Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna Preyasi. Namo Namaha
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha.
जे तोमारा शरण लोय तारा बांछा पूर्ण होय.
जे तुम्हारा शरण लाय तारा वंचा पूर्णा.
कृपा कोरी करो तारे वृंदावन वासी.
तुम्हें कृपा करे करो तरे वृंदावन वासी.
मोरा बिलास बिलास कुंजे दियो बास.
मोराए विलास कुंज दियोबा.
माया नेहरे बो सदा जुगल रूप रासी.
अमिनाया ने विवा सदा जुगाल रूप रासी.
एई निवेदन धर सखीरनुगत कर.
ए निवेदन धर सखीरनुगत कर.
सेवाधिकार दिए कर निज दासी.
सेवा यदि करो दिए करो निज दासी.
दीन कृष्ण दासी कोई जन मोर होय.
दीन कृष्ण दास कोई ए नामोरा.
श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेमे सदा जन बासी.
श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेम सदा ये नवासी.
श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेमे सदा जन बासी.
श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेम सदा ये नवासी.
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी. नमो नमः
तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः.
जानी कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे.
यानि कानि सपापानि ब्रह्मत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे.
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
याने काने sapapane brahmatari kane sa tani tani pranasante pradakshina pade pade
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्मत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
याने काने sapapane brahmatari kane sa tani tani pranasante pradakshina pade pade
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Jayo Brinda Devi Jayo Brinda Devi Jayo Brinda Devi Jayo Brinda Devi
Jaya Brinda Devi Jaya Brinda Devi Jaya Brinda Devi Jaya Brinda Devi
Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Tulsi Maharani
Jaya Tulsi Maharani Tulsi Maharani Tulsi Maharani Jaya Tulsi Maharani
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol
Hari Bol
Hari Bol
Hari Bol
Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol
Nittai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nittai Gaura Hari Bol
वृंदा देवी तुलसी महारानी की जय
Shri Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradi Devi Satavataye Namo Namah Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradi Devi Satavataye Namo Namah Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradi Devi Satavataye Namo Namah Jai Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai Oh Tulasi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire is to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you has wishes fulfilled. Bestow your mercy upon him, you make him resident of Vrindavan. My desire is that you also give me the residence pleasure groves of Shri Vrindavan Dham. Thus, within my vision, I will always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower of Kavidams of Raj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maid servant. This very fallen and lowly servant Krishna prays. May I always swim in love, Shishi, Radha and Govind. Shri Mate Tulsi Maharani, Brindadevi Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shikhastakam Ki Jai. Chaito Darpanamandanam Bhavamadabani Vivapanam Shri Akari Vichandika Vitaranam Vidya Madhujivanam Anandam Buddhivadhanam Padiparam Punamrita Swadanam Sarvatmasnam Param Paramjay Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Bhakta Nija Sarva Shakti Nija Pita Niyamita Shvane Nakala Ita Dusitava Kripaya Bhagavan Namati Dodhaiva Krisha Ya Janina Nuraga Trinadapi Sunichena Tarorapi Sarishna Amanya Maladena Kirtaniya Sadati Nadhanam Najanana Sundari Kavitam Jagarishatami Mama Janmani Janmanishari Bhavatar Bhakti Rahitu Kitwai Oi Nandatanu Jakinkaram Paritamam Vishame Bhagavan Buddha Vipaya Bhagavan Nidaduli Satisam Chindaya Nayanam Galara Shudhaya Varanam Garidhara Vidaya Vida Purakai Jitam Bhagavukana Namanama Gane Bhavisati Jugaitam Nimishena Chakrusha Prasaitam Shunya Itam Jagad Sarvam Govinda Vilahenami Asrishava Padaratam Pinashtama Adarshanan Marmahatam Karotuva Jata Tathava Vidadhatulam Patu Makranatastus Ivana Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikhastakam Ki Jai Namo Mahavarannaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Guru Tveshe Glory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart with the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life with repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan moment is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we're always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings. And thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govind. In these transcendental names you have invested with your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by holy names. But I'm so unfortunate I have no attraction for them. Once you chant the holy name of the Lord in humble state of mind, thinking oneself a Lord and stroll in the street, one should be more tolerant than the street, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your casual devotional service, birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yet somehow or other I'm falling in this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the Adams at your lotus feet. Oh my Lord, when will my eyes will be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up? And will the hairs of my body stand on the end of the recitation of your name? Oh Govinda, feeling your separation, I'm considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I'm feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I don't know one but Krishna as my Lord, and it should remain so, even if sandals me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Shri Krishna Ki Jai. There are 10 offenses in the matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that should be avoided. They are as follows. 1. To blaspheme the devotees who dedicate their life for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider the names of demigods, like Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, to be equal to or independent of the name Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic literatures or literatures and persons of Vedic version. 5. To consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation to the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord. 8. To consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which often evade us as fruitive activity, karma kanda. 9. To instruct the faithless person about the glories of the holy name. And 10. To not have complete faith in chanting the holy names and to maintain material attachments, even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must carefully guard against 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success, Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnavas, devotees of the Lord. They are just by desired trees, they can fulfill the desires of everyone. And they are full of compassion for fallen conditioned souls. Jevancha Kripatarubhascha Kripa Sindhu Devacha Paritanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Jayananta Kuti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai. Shri Guru Pranam Gangachan Ki Jai. Om Jnana Tirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmritam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Vishtam Savitam Jena Bhutale Svayarupakaram Yantadati Swarantakam Mandiyam Shri Guru Shri Jyotaparamaham Shri Gurun Vaishnavasya Shri Rupam Savijatam
Sahaguna Vitam Vitam Tam Sajivam Saidvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahaguna Lalita Shri Vitam Sa Namaha Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutali Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namini Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutali Shrimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Tinamine Shivasavanavi Devi Dayitaya Kripabdaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Dayane Prabhave Namaha Madhu Ujvala Premadhya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktida Shri Gora Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostute Namaste Gurvani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Virudapa Apasidanta Dvantaharine Namo Guru Kishoraya Sakshadvar Yamurtaye Vipralamba Rasambode Padambujayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Sachitananda Namine Guru Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gauravir Bhavavamistvam Nirdesta Sajjana Priya Vaishnava Sarvabhoma Shri Jagannathaya Te Namaha Vanchakalpatarabhyascha Kripasindhubhye Vacha Patitana Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavudanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namne Guru Chase Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakam Namami Bhaktasaktikam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Suratur Pangur Mama Manda Matir Gati Matsarva Swapadam Bhujo Radha Madana Mohana Divyad Vindaranya Kalpratumadaha Shimad Ratnagara Simasanastito Shimad Radha Shila Govinda Devo Prastali Bihi Sevyamana Smarami Shiman Rasa Rasarambi Vamsiva Tatatastita Karsan Venuswaner Gopir Gopinatak Striyestrana Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanustute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Brahmasamhita ki jai, Ishvara Paramas Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha, Anadiradir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam, Chintamani Prakara Satma Sakalpa Riksha, Laksha Riddhi Susurabhira Vipali Hantam, Lakshmi Sahasra Satasambrahma Sevyamanam, Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Venam Granantam Aravinda Dalayataksam, Barhavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam, Kandarpa Koti Kamaniya Vishesha Sobam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandra Kala Sadvanamadya Vamsi Ratnam Gadam Pranay Kele Kalabilasam Shaman Tribanga Lalita Nita Prakasam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakalendriya Vrittimanti Pasyanti Panti Kalyanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vikrahasya Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achyutam Anadi Mananta Rupa Madhyam Purana Purisham Navayovanam Cha Vedesa Durlabam Adurlabam Atma Bhakto Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastukoti Satavatsara Sampragam Yova Yorutapi Manasomari Pungamana Sopyasti Yat Prapadasimya Vichintya Tatve Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopya Sora Chayatum Jagadanda Kotim Yas Chakti Rasti Jagadanda Chaya Yadanta Andanta Rasta Paramanu Chayanta Rastam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yad Bhava Bhavita Dio Manajasta Taiva Sampraptya Yupa Mahimasam Yanabusa Sukta Yamevan Digama Pratitaistavanti Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajananda Chinmaya Rasat Pati Bhavita Bhistabirya Evani Jarupa Tayakalabi Goloka Evani Visata Kilat Babuta Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santaksadeva Hidesu Vilokayanti Yam Sham Sundaram Achintya Gunaswarupa Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Murti Sukalani Menatista Nanavatanam Akarod Bhuvanesu Kintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramam Pamamyo Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasya Prabha Pavavato Jagadanda Koti Koti Swaseswa Sudadi Vibhuti Binam Tad Brahma Niskanam Anantam Asesa Bhutam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Maya Hiyasya Jagadanda Satani Sute Jaigun Yatad Visarveda Vitayamanam Sadva Vulambi Parasatvam Visuddha Satvam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasat Matayamana Surya Prani Nam Partifulam Smaratam Ubedya Lila Yatena Bhuvanani Jaya Jasram Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Goloka Namni Nijidamni Talecha Tasya Devi Mahesu Haridama Sutesu Tesu Te Prabhava Nichaya Vichasayena Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shastista Tipalaya Sada Vasakti Reka Chayeva Yasya Bhuvanani Vivarti Durga Ichana Rupam Abhyasya Chesta Tesa Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shiram Yata Dadi Vikara Visesa Yoga Sanjayate Nahitata Pritakasti Hetu Yasam Bhutama Pitatasam Vaitikarya Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Departure Hid the Santanam Abhyapetya Dipayate Vitaheti Samanu Dharma Yasta Jakevi Vishnu Tayavibhati Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yakamar Narna Vajali Vajtisma Yoga Nijamananta Jagananda Saramakupa Adhara Shakti Mavalamya Param Swamurtim Ovindamadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasyaika Nisvasita Kalamata Valambya Jivanti Loma Villaja Jagrandanata Vishnu Mahansa Yasyakala Vishesha Govindamadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Basman Yatasma Sakalation Jesha Teja Suyam Kiyat Prakatayat Apitadvatatra Brahmaya Esa Jagadanda Vidana Karta Govindamadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yat Pada Palava Yukam Vinidaya Kumbha Dwande Pranamas Tamayesa Grandi Raja Vignan Vihanta Malamasya Jagatrayasya Govindamadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Agni Mahiga Ganamambu Marudisascha Kalashta Tatmamanasati Jagatrayani Yasmad Bhavanti Visanti Yamcha Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajayas Chaksuresha Sabita Sakalagrahana Raja Samasta Suramurti Rasesa Teja Yasya Gaya Brahmati Sambrita Kala Chakro Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Dharmota Papa Nichaya Sutayasta Pamsi Brahmati Kita Patakava Teyasta Jiva Yadhata Matra Vibhava Prakatapavava Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajam Yastindra Gopa Matavindra Ahoswakarma Bandan Rupa Falabhajan Amatanoti Karmani Nita Hatikintu Chabakti Bhajam Govinda Amadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajam Yam Kroda Kamasa Japranayadi Biddi Vatsalya Moha Guru Gora Vasavya Bhava Sanchinta Tasha Sadrisim Tanamapurete Govinda Amadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajam Sriya Kanta Kanta Parama Purusha Kalpatara Vajramabu Mistintamani Ganama Ito Amritam Kata Ganam Natyam Gamanam Apivam Sipriyasa Kechiranandam Jyoti Param Apitada Swadyam Apicha Sayatra Shiradi Vidisha Vatish Ravdim Gyasta Sumahan Nimesa Dakyava Vajitina Hiyatrapi Samaya Bajay Sritadri Kramta Maham Iha Golakamitiam Vedanta Ste Santakshiti Viracha Rakati Vahe Guru Vastika prayers Kijay. From the ocean and mercy, just as a cloud pours water on the forest right to extinguish each other, the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence. Out from my respectful basis unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master, who's an ocean of auspicious qualities, chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing, playing musical instruments. The spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because he's relishing the mellows of pure devotion with his mind. Sometimes his hair stands on end, he feels quivering in his body, and tears flow from his eyes like waves. Out from my respectful basis unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. The spiritual master is always engaged in temple worship with Shri Radha and Krishna. He also engages his disciples in such worship. They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments, clean their temple, and perform other similar worship with the Lord. From my respectful basis unto the lotus feet is such spiritual master. The spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food, analyzes that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked. When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasad, he is satisfied. I offer my respectful basis unto the lotus feet is such spiritual master. The spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal passion of Radhika and Madhava and their qualities, names, and forms. The spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment. I offer my respectful basis unto the lotus feet is such spiritual master. The spiritual master is very dear because he is expert in assisting gopis who at different times with different tastes are arranged for the perfection of Radha and Krishna. Conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavan. I offer my most humble basis unto the lotus feet as such a spiritual master. The spiritual master, to be honest, is much the Supreme Lord, because he's the most confidential servant to the Lord. This is acknowledged in all revealed scripture and followed by all authorities. Therefore, I offer my respectful basis unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master who is a bona fide representative of Sri Hare Krishna. By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master. At least 3 times a day, I should offer my respectful basis unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, his divine grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam Grantha Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Daiva Dinesu Kamesu Daiva Dinna Swayam Pumam Kovishram Beta Yogena Yogeswaram Anusrata. Daiva, supernatural. Adinesu, being controlled. Kamesu, in sense enjoyment. Daiva Adina, controlled by supernatural force. Swayam, himself. Puman, the living entity. Ka, whoever. Vishrambeta, can have faith in. Yogena, by devotional service. Yogeswaram, the Supreme Lord. Anuvrata, serving. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Every living entity is controlled by a supernatural force, and thus his sense enjoyment is also under the control of that supernatural force. No one, therefore, can put his faith in Lord Krishna's transcendental sense activities except or but one who has become a devotee of the Lord by rendering devotional service. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, no one can understand the transcendental births and activities of the Lord. The same fact is herein corroborated. No one but one who is enlightened by the devotional service of the Lord can understand the difference between the Lord's activities and those of others who are controlled by the supernatural force. The sense enjoyment of all animals, men and demigods, within the purview of the material universe is controlled by the supernatural force called Prakriti, or Daivi Maya. No one is independent in obtaining sense enjoyment, and everyone in this material world is after sense enjoyment. Persons who are themselves under the control of supernatural power cannot believe that Lord Krishna is not under any control beyond himself in the matter of sense enjoyment. They cannot understand that his senses are transcendental. In the Brahma Samhita, the Lord's senses are described as omnipotent. That is, with any sense, he can perform the activities of the other senses. One who has limited senses cannot believe that the Lord can eat by his transcendental power of hearing and can perform the act of sex life simply by seeing. The controlled living entity cannot even dream of such sense activities in his conditional life. But simply by the activities of Bhakti Yoga, he can understand that the Lord and his activities are always transcendental. As the Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 18:55, Bhaktya mam abhijanati yavanyaschasmi tattvataha. One cannot know even a fraction of the activities of the Lord if he is not a pure devotee of the Lord. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Every living entity is controlled by a supernatural force, and thus his sense enjoyment is also under the control of that supernatural force. No one, therefore, can put his faith in Lord Krishna's transcendental sense activities, but one who has become a devotee of the Lord but one who has become a devotee of the Lord by rendering devotional service. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So there are a lot of fundamental points in this purport today. So we have been discussing sex in the spiritual world. And the first point is one cannot even approach this concept of sex in the spiritual world without being completely purified of material desires. So there's no use even talking about it unless you have an audience of people who are purified of the material sense gratification. However, if someone has no desires for sense gratification and only desires to please Krishna, at that point they can understand the Lord's transcendental pastimes in the spiritual world. So, therefore, in general, we don't talk about these things, especially in public, because it's confidential knowledge. So, the last chapter of Bhagavad Gita is let's see, wait a minute. Not the last chapter, but the 9th chapter is called The Most Confidential Knowledge. So what is in the 9th chapter that is so confidential? Well, Krishna says in the 9th chapter, 11th, 10th verse. Maya daksena pakriti suyate characharam hetananena konteya jagat viparivartate. So that means this material nature, which is one of my energies, is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, producing all moving and non-moving beings. Under its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. So, this is not taught in schools. They say, as we heard yesterday, the Mataji who's getting her degree in Montessori, the way Montessori schools teach, they make up things to teach the kids. There's no factual evidence that what they're saying is true. So they make up the story of Molly and Lucy or whatever. They created the material world. And there's books in the library that the kids have to read. Yeah. So actually we should get a copy of the Molly and Lucy and just see how ridiculous it is. And then it says, Avajanti mam mudha manasim tanam asritaha parambhavam ajananto mamabhuta maheshwaram. Fools deride me when I descend in a human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the Supreme Lord of all that be. So when this question of sex in the spiritual world comes up, immediately the nonsense people, they project their own concept of mundane sex, and they think that Krishna engages in mundane sex like them. It's not true. And in the purport today, in this verse that we read, it explains that Krishna has transcendental potencies. And it says, they, meaning the dumbbells, the materialists, they cannot understand that his senses, Krishna's senses, are transcendental. In the Brahma Samhita, the Lord's senses are described as omnipotent. So omnipotent is a English word, but it has two Latin parts to it. So omni means all in Latin, and potent means power. So the word omnipotent, which comes from Latin language, has been inherited or has been made into an English word, and it means having all power. So in the Brahma Samhita, the Lord's senses are described as omnipotent. And then when it says i.e., it means that is. With any sense, he can perform the activities of the other senses. Now, no one can say that they can do that. The only person that can do that is Krishna. And so one who has limited senses cannot believe that the Lord can eat by his transcendental power of hearing and can perform the act of sex life simply by seeing. So, in the Srimad Bhagavatam 10th canto, of which we have a summary called the Krishna book, right in the beginning, there's an explanation of how Krishna appears in the material world as the son of Vasudeva and Devaki. So it says in the 2nd chapter of the Krishna book, it says, thus ordered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Yogamaya circumambulated the Lord and then appeared within this material world according to his, meaning Krishna's, order. When Yogamaya, the supreme power of the supremely powerful personality of Godhead, transferred Lord Shesha from the womb of Devaki to the womb of Rohini, both Devaki and Rohini were under Yogamaya's spell, which is called Yoga Nidra. When this was done, people thought that Devaki's 7th pregnancy had been a miscarriage. Thus, although Balarama appeared as the son of Devaki, he was transferred to the womb of Rohini to appear as her son. After this arrangement, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, who is always ready to protect his unalloyed devotees, entered within the mind of Vasudeva as the Lord of the whole creation, with full inconceivable potencies. It is understood in this connection that Lord Krishna first of all situated himself in the unalloyed heart of Vasudeva and was then transferred to the heart of Devaki. He was not put into the womb of Devaki by seminal discharge. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, by his inconceivable potency, can appear in any way. It is not necessary for him to appear in the ordinary way by seminal injection within the womb of a woman. So when Vasudeva was sustaining the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead within his heart, he appeared just like the glowing sun, whose shining rays are always unbearable and scorching to the common man. The form of the Lord situated in the pure unalloyed heart of Vasudeva is not different from the original form of Krishna. The appearance of the form of Krishna anywhere, and specifically within the heart, is called Dhamma. Dhamma refers not only to Krishna's form, but also to his name, his qualities, and his paraphernalia. Everything becomes manifest simultaneously. Thus, the eternal form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, with full potencies, was transferred from the mind of Vasudeva to the mind of Devaki, exactly as the setting sun's rays are transferred to the full moon rising in the east. So this gives us an idea right now of how Krishna can engage in activities without the use of a material body. His body is not material, it's completely spiritual. Therefore, he has potencies in his body that are unbelievable to materialists, but believable. This is called confidential knowledge, because not everyone can understand it, even if they read it, even if they hear it, even if they think they understand it, but they don't really understand, because one must be purified of all material desires to understand this. So, therefore, and then we have other examples, like, for example, when Krishna wants to do something, simply by thinking of it, it happens. Simply by thinking, just like here, he wanted to appear as the son of Vasudeva and Devaki, so he enters into the mind of Vasudeva, and then Vasudeva transfers the thought of Krishna to his wife, and then Krishna appears in her womb, and without any seminal discharge. So this is incomprehensible for materialistic people, but it is very comprehensible for the devotees. Why? You cannot be a devotee unless you accept that Krishna has unimaginably great qualities. In other words, he can do things that no one else can do, not even Lord Shiva or Lord Brahma. So unless we accept that fact, we actually remain an atheist. Even though we might be associating with devotees or chanting sometimes, but we remain an atheist because we don't accept that the Lord has these inconceivable potencies. So, in this verse today, it says that everyone is subject to the supernatural. It says, every living entity is controlled by a supernatural force. So what does he mean by this supernatural force? He's talking about the three modes of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance, that controls the activities of living entities. We're all controlled by these three modes. But by practicing Krishna consciousness, we can rise, we can become transcendental, and not be controlled by them. We can be controlled by Krishna. So therefore, it says in the Bhagavad Gita that Mam chayovi bicharina bhakti yogena sevate sagunam samatityaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. So this is the 14th chapter. And 26th verse. One who engages in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. Brahman means the spiritual level. Okay? So Prabhupada says in this verse, this verse is in reply to Arjuna's third question. What is the means of attaining to the transcendental position? As explained before, the material world is acting under the spell of the modes of material nature. So that is the supernatural force, these modes of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance. And it's controlling everyone's activities in this material world. But if one becomes a devotee, a genuine devotee, not a phony devotee, but a genuine devotee, they can transcend the control of these supernatural forces. And one should not be disturbed by the activities of the modes of nature. Instead of putting his consciousness into such activities, he may transfer his consciousness to Krishna activities. Krishna activities are known as bhakti yoga, always acting for Krishna. This includes not only Krishna, but his different plenary expansions, such as Rama and Narayana. He has innumerable expansions. One who is engaged in the service of any of the forms of Krishna or of his plenary expansions is considered to be transcendently situated. One should also note that all the forms of Krishna are fully transcendental and blissful, full of knowledge and eternal. Such personalities of Godhead are omnipotent, meaning they have all power, and omniscient, and they know everything. So, here's two words, omnipotent and omniscient. Both of them are Latin words that have been accepted in the English language. And they mean that Krishna is omnipotent, has all powers, and omniscient. He has all knowledge, and he can see everything that's happening everywhere. Why? Because he's Paramatma in the heart of every living entity. And this is also explained in Bhagavad Gita in the 13th chapter, where it says, everywhere are his eyes, and so forth. One second, let me see where that is. That's it. It says, yet in this body there is another, a transcendental enjoyer, who is the Lord, the supreme proprietor, who exists as the overseer and permitter, and who is known as the supersoul. So, we're not alone in this body. Krishna is also in our body, in the heart, as the supersoul. And he knows everything we're doing. And therefore it says also, so this is the 13th chapter, verse number 20, what was that? Yeah, 23. And then verse number 28 says, one who sees the supersoul accompanying the individual soul in all bodies, and who understands that neither soul nor the supersoul within the destructible body is ever destroyed, actually sees. So our soul is eternal, and Krishna's Paramatma expansion is also eternal. So anyone who by good association can see three things combined together, the body, the proprietor of the body, or the individual soul, and the friend of the individual soul, meaning Paramatma, is actually in knowledge. Unless one has the association of a real knower of spiritual subjects, one cannot see these three things. Those who do not have such association are ignorant. They simply see the body and they think that when the body is destroyed, everything is finished. But actually, it is not so. After the destruction of the body, both the soul and the supersoul exist, and they go on eternally in many various moving and non-moving forms. The Sanskrit word Parameshwara is sometimes translated as the individual soul, because the soul is the master of the body, and after the destruction of the body, he transfers to another form. In that way, he is master, but there are others who interpret this Parameshwara to be the supersoul. In either case, both the supersoul and the individual soul continue. They are not destroyed. One who can see in this way can actually see what is happening. So very few people understand what is actually happening to them. The number one mystery is that our body is always changing, right? And we can see that, when the baby is born, it's sort of helpless and completely dependent on the parents. And then it goes into childhood, and it starts seeing things and learning things, and then become an adolescent, a teenager, and you just begin to see the greater outside world, and then you become an adult, and you accept responsibilities, and you work, and making money, and spending money, and getting more and more entangled in material life, and engaging in sex and different things like that, and then middle age, and then old age, and then death. The body is always changing, but yet it's a mystery why it's doing that, but it's the laws of nature that are controlling it, along with the three modes of material nature. So the whole thing is a mystery. We don't know how it's happening, but it's happening to us, and we're witnessing it. And we make up different theories or accept theories by other speculators, but here we're hearing the real truth. Bhagavad Gita is presenting the real truth about what our position is. So, we should see three things. There's the body, made of matter. There's the individual soul, which is eternal, and there's the super soul, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, witnessing what we're doing. So we can never do anything and get away with it, because Krishna's in the heart, witnessing everything we do. So when a child is taught this, they become, or they have a good chance of becoming actually civilized. Civilized means everything you do, you do it understanding that Krishna is watching you. And if you are sincere and engaged in Krishna's service, he gives you the intelligence to do things properly. And if you're insincere and always talking nonsense, hearing nonsense, playing video games, whatever, wasting your life, then he takes away your knowledge, right? Because he can give you knowledge and remembrance and also forgetfulness. So, therefore, it's very difficult nowadays for children to concentrate because of all the digital technology, which is basically the technology today is the dispersing or confusing one's mind, going from one thing to another, because it's based on 10, 10, 10, 10. And where previously everything was based on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or monary technology instead of binary technology. Binary technology goes 10, 10, 10. Monary technology goes one all the time, Krishna. So there's a major difference. When one becomes a devotee, they leave this binary technology and they just focus on one thing, that is pleasing Krishna. That simplifies life, and that means one will be a tremendous success in his life. Just like Prabhupada had one desire, right? That was to please his Guru and Krishna. And look what he did. He's the most successful person. He starts with nothing and creates a big, gigantic movement that's still going on by his potency. So if we want to look at success, here's the best success. And we have other examples, like Narada Muni. He's born in a very poor family. It's a single-parent family. He becomes the most exalted, devotee of the Lord. He has complete liberation. He can go anywhere he wants. He doesn't need an airplane. He doesn't need trains. Doesn't need cars. He can travel throughout space. And he can go to the spiritual world, or he can go to hell if he wants to. And sometimes he does. not that he's a prisoner in hell like everybody else, but he goes there to preach. See? So these are the real successful people. Brahma is also very successful. He's manager of the whole universe. And Surya, or Vivaswan, is very successful. He controls the sun. And they're jivas like us. Of course, it's hard for us to believe that one can be so powerful. That's because of modern education. But if you get educated from Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, you'll be able to do these extraordinary things. Because when we surrender to the Lord, He gives us the knowledge by which we can come back to Him. And He gives us the knowledge, He reveals the knowledge to us, how we can do all types of different things for His pleasure. So this is explained right in the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, verses 32 to 35, in which it says that most people are living to have sense gratification, and they want God to be the deliverer, or they pray to God for sense gratification. But the devotee understands that real spiritual life is based on pleasing the senses of Krishna, not pleasing one's own senses. But because we're part and parcel of Krishna, if we please Krishna, our senses will also be satisfied, much greater than if we work selfishly only to please our own senses. If we work selfishly, we are controlled by the laws of nature. That is, the law of reincarnation means that you have a carryover from previous life of desires, and you have a mixed bag of pious and impious activities. So, therefore, in the next life, you can't escape from that karmic reaction. But if you become a devotee, that karmic reaction is put on hold so that you're free to engage in service of Krishna. If you fall down, all that karmic reaction comes back again. See? So we have that verse, 14th chapter, 26th verse, Mam Chayovi Bicharena, Bhakti Yogena Sevate, Sagunam Samatitya Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate. That verse says, one who engages in devotional service and never falls down under any circumstances transcends the laws of material nature and attains Brahman, or a spiritual begins to live in the spiritual reality rather than the material entanglement. So, do we believe this? That's the whole point. Who are we going to believe? Are we going to believe the mundane speculators and mundane knowledge that's being taught in schools about Molly and Lucy, which is complete nonsense, right? Or are we going to believe Bhagavad Gita, which is Krishna speaking about himself? So, this is a decision we have to make in our life. And the quicker we make that decision, the more successful we'll be. And the lesser, the less success will be. Someone will say, no, I want to be successful. I want to make money. I want to, maybe get IT or AI or this thing or that thing, digital technology, binary technology. Binary technology would take you away from Krishna, but Krishna consciousness will bring you closer to Krishna. So, now, is there something negative in going away from binary technology? No, because you become elevated spiritually by fixing your mind on Krishna. And the example is Prabhupada. He's the most successful person, right? Because he fixed his mind on pleasing Krishna through the instructions of his bona fide spiritual master and spiritual masters. So that is the real path to success. So therefore, now we come back to this subject of sex in the spiritual world. Unless we understand Krishna has unlimited and unimaginably great qualities and powers, we remain an atheist. So he can do things simply by thinking of it. He can get things done just simply by thinking of it, and it happens. And we think about something, but then we have to work really hard to get it done. Right? Like, let's say you want to make a new app. Well, you would think about it, and then you would have to start organizing yourself and others to make it. And it's not an easy thing, but it requires your physical and mental effort. Krishna doesn't have to do that. He just simply thinks about something and it happens. And without him actually doing any work. And that's because he has this unimaginable supernatural power. So therefore, being close to Krishna is the smartest thing we can do. In other words, developing our relationship to Krishna is the smartest thing we could do in our life, because Krishna becomes our friend if we take an interest in hearing about Krishna and glorifying him. And he gives us a knowledge by which we can do things successfully. And he protects us so we don't fall down. And he is always vigilant to keep us on the right track. So if you want, like, for example, let's say you want to make friends with a billionaire. Well, that's pretty hard to do. But let's say you're able to make friends with a billionaire, and the billionaire tells you, look, whatever you need, just ask me, I'll help you, because I have such great respect for you. So that would solve all your problems in life. Let's say your material problems. But Krishna is more than simply a billionaire. He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If we develop our relationship with Krishna, and Krishna clearly says that just surrender unto me, and I will, first of all, free you from all karmic reactions of your past deeds. That alone is worth billions and billions of dollars. Because if you're freed of your previous karma, which you don't know what it is until it actually happens, but Krishna will free you from it, then you can surrender unto him. Yesam tvantakatam papam jananam punyakarmanam te dvandam mohanirmukta bhajanti mantrita. So again, this is a verse from the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And it says, one second, those who have performed pious activities in previous lives and in this life, and who and whose sinful acts are completely eradicated, are freed from the dualities of delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. So, dualities of delusion, this is what is holding us back from being effective in our lives. Because just like somebody wants to go to college, so he or she applies to 2, 3, 4 colleges. And they have their first choice, second choice, third choice, fourth choice. And they miss the first choice, second choice, and they have to choose from the third choice and the fourth choice. So that's not what they really want, but they're forced to accept it because they're rejected by the first 2 choices. So that means that we're not independent. We're always going to be controlled by different outside forces. But if you're controlled by Krishna and supported by Krishna, then you're never going to be limited. If our only desires are to please Krishna, Krishna will help us to satisfy all those desires unlimitedly. But if we have selfish desires, we can only do things according to our previous karma. So, therefore, one has to become free of their previous karma to really understand and function in devotional service. And in the purport to 7th chapter, 28th verse, it says, those eligible for elevation to the transcendental position are mentioned in this verse. For those who are sinful, atheistic, foolish, and deceitful, it is very difficult to transcend the duality of desire and hate. Only those who have passed their lives in practicing the regulative principles of religion, who have acted piously, and who have conquered sinful reactions, can accept devotional service and gradually rise to the pure knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then, gradually, they can meditate in trance on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is a process of being situated on the spiritual platform. This elevation is possible in Krishna consciousness, in the association of pure devotees. For in the association of great devotees, one can be delivered from delusion. The delusion is it's through industrialization and digital technology or binary technology that I will be successful in life. That is a lie. That's not true. And you can try it, and you'll see that you'll be a failure. So how do we decide if someone's a failure or a success? If they can remember Krishna at the moment of death, they go back to Godhead. And if they don't, they're a complete failure, because they have to start all over again. Birth, death, old age, and disease. And no guarantee of what the next body is. So that is real success, to become free of birth, death, old age, and disease, and go back to Godhead. Then all your problems of life are solved. But if we just remain in the material world, life after life, that means that we are really stupid. Because we have a chance. I mean, the whole purpose of the material creation is to give the living entities who have become conditioned by ignorance a chance to rectify themselves and go back to Godhead. So that is the real purpose of the material world. It's not to come here and engage in sense gratification, because then one is condemning oneself to remain in the cycle of birth and death. So first let's decide what is real success. Because if you say, no, real success is I'll have a nice house, a nice family, and nice clothes, and nice vacations, and nice cars, and maybe boats or a yacht, and this thing and that thing. All those things are going to be taken away from you. At the moment of death, you lose all those things. You can't take any of them with you, right? So, therefore, all those things are temporary. They're asat. They're not eternal. But the devotee concerns himself with sat, whatever is eternal, and cannot be taken away from you, right? So, therefore, let's decide on what is actual success in life. The actual success is being liberated from the cycle of birth and death, going back to Godhead. That solves all problems of life: birth, death, old age, and disease. Of course, it's hard to believe because of materialistic indoctrination. We think it's impossible. Even if you're an initiated devotee, you still think this is all impossible. I can't do any of these things, and I'm afraid to do any of it. Right? I'm afraid to give all this binary technology up and just take care of cows and vegetables and things like that. Well, that's ignorance. For millions of years, people lived like that. And they thrived. And they were very... You look at Nanda Maharaj, he has 900,000 cows. He's very, very rich. And Prahlad Maharaj, very, very rich. He was emperor of the whole world, of the whole universe. And Dhruva Maharaj, and Parikshit Maharaj. We go down the list. These are all very great personalities, and they're very wealthy, but they lived very simply and used all their wealth in the service of Krishna. So that's basically the statement in the first chapter, 32nd to 35th verse. And in the purport it says, if we go the opposite way, instead of the materialistic way, we go the spiritual way, and give up all our material desires and replace them with spiritual desires to please Krishna, then there's no limit to how much Krishna will satisfy our desires. Prabhupada wanted to build a big movement, right? He starts with nothing, and he builds a gigantic movement, because that was in his mind. I want to please my Guru and Krishna. I'm going to follow the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness. And look what happened. He was able to do what he wanted to do, which was spread Krishna consciousness in the Western world. And to do that, he made this gigantic organization called ISKCON. So this is real success, right? And it can't be taken away from you. So we're still talking about Prabhupada today. We're still talking about Arjuna today. What Arjuna did is immortalized, right? Because it's the most significant thing. He took advice from Krishna and perfected his life and was completely successful, materially and spiritually. So, do we believe it? That's the question. And but even though we have so many examples, well, if we don't believe it, it's due to mundane indoctrination in schools and social media and friends and family members. I remember when I became Krishna conscious, one time I went to visit my family, and some of my relatives came to see me, and they were all trying to convince me to quit Krishna consciousness. I'm wasting my time. I'm not going to get ahead in life. But yet, I'm the most successful person in our family, right? I've done things that they can't even imagine doing, right? So we have to make a decision in our life which way we're going to go. So it says here, persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated. Well, by surrendering to Krishna, he puts all our sinful reactions on hold. But if we fall down, they come back again. And also, if we commit sins after being initiated, that is also very, let's say, detrimental to us. So therefore, whenever we make a mistake, we should acknowledge it and correct it, not make it a habit of making the same mistake over and over again in our spiritual life. Okay, so it says, only to those who have passed their lives in practicing the regulative principles of religion, who have acted piously, and who have conquered sinful reactions, can accept devotional service and gradually rise to the pure knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So you see, the first point mentioned here is regulative principles. That's what makes the difference between a devotee and a non-devotee. A non-devotee will not follow regulative principles of waking up early every day, attending Mangala Aarti, and then taking part in the class. That is your vaccination every day. We get a vaccine every day against Maya. And if we don't do that, then we become a victim of Maya. And Maya is very powerful. She can hold on to us lifetimes, not just one lifetime, many lifetimes. And that weakness is not following the regulative principles. And there are 8 regulative principles. 4 things we shouldn't do, 4 things we should do. So the sooner we learn these things and follow them, the more successful we'll be in our life. Okay, so then it says, then gradually they can meditate in trance on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the process of being situated on the spiritual platform. This elevation is possible in Krishna consciousness, in the association of pure devotees. For in the association of great devotees, one can be delivered from delusion. It is stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 5.5.2 that if one actually wants to be liberated, he must render service to the devotees. Mahat sevam dwaram ahur vimukte. But one who associates with materialistic people is on the path leading to the darkest region of existence. Tamodwaram yositam sangi sangam. All the devotees of the Lord traverse this earth just to recover the conditioned souls from the delusion. The impersonalists do not know that forgetting their constitutional position as subordinate to the Supreme Lord is the greatest violation of God's law. Unless one is reinstated in his own constitutional position, it is not possible to understand the Supreme Personality of God, Supreme Personality, or to be fully engaged in his transcendental loving service with determination. Wow, it's a very powerful purport. 7th chapter, verse 28. We should read this every day, just to remind us to see whether we're wasting our life or actually taking advantage of all the assets of spiritual life that Krishna is offering us freely. Right? So we have to decide, do I want to be an idiot or do I want to be actually a genuine devotee? There are plenty of idiots in the world, so we don't need any more. Right? It's already too many of them. Right? And they're making a mess of the world and their own lives and other people's lives. What we need are intelligent people who understand what the real goal of life is. And what the real goal is, this material creation was created by Krishna to give conditioned souls like you and me a chance to go back to Godhead. And it's very easy to go back to Godhead in the age of Kali. Lord Chaitanya made it very, very easy. Chant, dance, feast, and go on Sankirtan. Okay, we'll stop right there. Are there any questions? So we learned about sex in the spiritual world. Whoa.
So, Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. So, my question is, like, how do we define our understanding here?
How do we define what?
How do we define understanding?
Understanding?
Yeah.
Well, if someone punches on your nose, do you understand it?
You have to feel it, that means.
Okay, well, so in life, you can go two ways. Either Maya punches you or Krishna hugs you. So you decide which one you want. You want to be punched always by Maya? Okay, that's your choice.
The reason I'm asking is, like, right, here it says...
Well, wait a minute. Let's understand this. Which is better, Krishna's embrace or Maya's punch?
Obviously, Krishna's embrace.
So it's a no-brainer then. You should strive to understand things through Krishna's embrace, not Maya's punch. And why is she punching you? To wake you up from your slumber, from your ignorance, and say, "Hey, Jiva, wake up! You're going the wrong direction." You know, that's why she's punching you. Just like, when you're sleeping, if let's say someone comes up to you and starts punching you in the head, right? You wake up, and they say, "Wake up, you nonsense! You're not going to Mangala Aarti. Get up, take a shower, and go to Mangala Aarti." Right? So that punching is actually mercy, right? Because do you make any spiritual advancement by sleeping through the Brahma Muhurta? No. You don't make any spiritual advancement at all. In fact, you go in the opposite direction. You become contaminated, dreaming crazy things instead of chanting Hare Krishna and seeing the deities. So, do we want Krishna's embrace or we want Maya's punch? You decide.
But that's a medium, right? I mean, it's not understanding. It's a medium of
No, that's understanding. Someone punches you, you understand it, right? And someone embraces you, you also understand it.
Okay. So, with that said, what my original question was, in this verse, Prabhupada says that no one understands, basically.
No materialist understands. Devotees understand.
Devotees.
But
pure devotees.
Yes.
He specifically talk about the
so
pure
therefore
devotees.
You should become a pure devotee.
Sorry?
You should become a pure devotee.
Yeah, but then, yes. So, that's right, that we should become pure devotee and everybody is trying for that. But unless you are pure devotee, it's hard to understand as per this And this is all about
Let me
transcendental.
ask you a question. How do you become a pure devotee? You tell me.
Yeah, just practicing the four regulatory principles, whatever the acharyas said about.
No, by coming to class every day. Because you're being reminded about the four regulative principles, about so many things. You're being reminded on a daily basis. That's how you become a pure devotee. Because our disease is forgetfulness. So therefore, we need to be reminded every day what is the purpose, real purpose of life, and how to attain it. Otherwise, you walk out, and all of a sudden, I got to do this, I got to do that, I have to pay this, I have to go here, I have to go there, I have to fill out this form, I have to give some deliverables to my team. Right away you forgot about Krishna, transcendental life, everything. You're overwhelmed by all these so-called responsibilities, but actually you've accepted them out of ignorance. You don't really need to do all those things. See? You can, if you have a little bit of land and a cow, you don't need all those things. You would be able to live a simple life. But no, we want all these things. We think because we're duped, we're fooled to think they're necessary. And therefore we get entangled. So therefore coming every day and hearing Krishna's instructions in Bhagavad Gita, you become a pure devotee. You'll see how to limit all those so-called necessities of life. They're not actually necessities. They're just entanglements. That was wasting your life, wasting your time, your energy.
Yeah. So again, then there is a difference between listening and understanding, because we hear and listen, but understanding is again different, right? So Krishna says
you have to want to understand. If you say, "Oh yeah, I've heard this many times, but I'm not going to follow it," then you don't understand. But the proof that you understand is you follow. You follow strictly the regulative principles. You wake up strictly every day, and come to Mangala Aarti and hear the class and bow down to the deities. So that means you understood. Yeah. That means you're going out on Sankirtan, taking the food truck out, all these things. You've understood. You're allocating your time, even though you have to work and take care of the family, all these other things, but still, because you're regulated, that means you've understood. Or that means your understanding is there. If you're not regulated, that means you haven't understood anything.
So here it says that the pure devotee only can understand the transcendental activities of Lord Krishna, right? So Srimad Bhagavatam is all about Lord Krishna's transcendental activities. So from very first chapter, first verse, right?
No, how you heard today from the Srimad Bhagavatam,
yeah,
which is Krishna book, 10th canto, how Krishna has sex. It's nothing like in the material world. It's completely different. He can give birth to, or he can take birth just by thinking. We can't imagine what that is. I mean these. Although you understand the words, but do you actually understand it? That he can give birth just by thinking about it. Just see it. He has incredible powers. He can use any of his senses in any way he wants. Therefore, he can eat simply by hearing your prayers. Just by hearing, he can eat. You can't do that. Therefore, it's just fantastic. It's just incredible that there's someone as powerful as Krishna. But if you don't accept it, then you remain an atheist. And the atheists don't accept that Krishna can do these things. They think these are just stories. But the stories is Molly and Lucy, not Krishna book. That's a story. You see? So, we throw it back into their face. You're Molly and Lucy, that's a story. Krishna book is reality, the real reality, spiritual, transcendental reality. We have to be convinced of that. Otherwise, we won't get, serious about following the regulative principles and being regulated. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was regulated. He was a magistrate. He had the highest position an Indian could achieve in the British Empire. He was also head of the Jagannath Temple. He had, I think, 13 kids with his wife and educating them. He wrote a huge amount of literature. He was writing from like 12 o'clock at night till 6 o'clock in the morning. And then doing all these things, he was just an incredible person. Why? Because he was regulated. So you get regulated, you will be able to do incredible things also. Don't think you can't. Any other questions? Understanding means you're engaged 24 hours a day in devotional service. That's real understanding. Okay, so no more questions. Haribol, glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma
Bando Mui Savadana Te
Bando Mui Savadana Mate
Jahara Prasade Bai E Bhavatoriya Jai
Kanara Prasade Bai E Bhavatoriya Jai
Krishna Prapti Hoy Jai
Ye Prasade Puri Sarva Asa
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitite Koriya Kya
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitete Goriya Kya
Aranakari Ho Maneya
Arana Goriya Maneya Sa Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Uttamagati
Jai Prasade Pure Sarvasha
E Prasade Pure Sarva Asa
Chakshudan Dilo Janme Janme Prabhu Se
Chakshudan Dila Jai Janme Janme Prabhu Se
Divya Gyan Hriday Prakashito
Divya Gyan Hriday Prakashito
Prema Bhakti Jaha Hoite Avidya Vinasa Jate
Prema Bhakti Jaha Hote Avidya Vinasa Jate
Vedegar Jaharatharito
Charito
Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adama Janara Bandhu
Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adana Janara Bandhu
Lokanath Loke Rajivana
Lokanath Loke Rajivana
Aha Prabhu Koro Doya Deho More Padachaya
Aha Prabhu Kora Doya Deya More Padachaya
Ebe Jas Kushu Tribhuvana
Deya Sushati Bhuvana
O Prabhupada Pradita Pavana
Prabhupada Paditita Bhavana
Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada
Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada
Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva
Jaya Gurudeva Jaya Gurudeva Jaya Gurudeva Jaya Gurudeva
Namah Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine
Namah Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namine
Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pastyatya Deshatarine
Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pasyatya Desatarine
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jayo Prabhupada, 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 Jayo Prabhupada.
Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada.
Jayo Prabhupada, 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 Jayo Prabhupada.
Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Guru Deva, Guru Deva, Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva.
Jaya Gurudeva, Jaya Gurudeva, Jaya Gurudeva. Jaya Vishnupad, Paramahansa Pararajagachara, Astatara Satarishi, Shishimad His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anantakoti Vaishnava Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Ram Sako Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Vaitik Radha Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Shri Radha Krishna Gogopinath Sam Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Shri Mayapura Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Tulasi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Ganga Maya Ki Jai, Jamuna Maya Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, Patita Pavana Ki Jai.
The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna.
My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires.
He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He's my Lord birth after birth. From his ecstatic prema emanates by him. Ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character.
Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor, and the Lord and master of the devotees. O Lokanath Goswami, O Master, be merciful unto me. Give me the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread all over the three worlds.